rock and roll, rock and roll. I got some company. Quadruplets. A bit moody, financially stressed. My only stress now is financially. Got those red gloves in the backpack and going a little bit towards that X. Where are we gonna go, on the left, on the right? Where are we gonna go with that? Maybe on a freestyle mode here, of course, in Montreal, Hawk Island, the Hawk. Always gotta get it on that left and on that right. And always marching for the firefighters, the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the truckers, the plumbers, electricians, the welders. Financially stressed, a bit moody. It's been a long time. I haven't been depressed and suicidal since 2017 when I crossed Canada coast to coast, and that event made me come out of my depression. Gonna check the gas price for calculation purposes. Of course, on the march I always calculate the prices and make an estimation due to the cost of living having increased in the past 3.5 years on a disproportionate manner. And yeah, it went down by a cent, a penny. So that is not considerable, a penny, right? Well, we're going to try to get a little bit of sun on the left, on the right, and then we're going to get it. Yeah, a penny. It's 154. I was seeing a little bit blurred, but yeah, 154. 154. That's what it is with that. And for those, I guess even a penny, if it goes down a penny, well, for 100 liters, that's $1. But nonetheless, it is 75% higher than it was in 2020, you know. And we're gonna go towards the sun. I just want to go check the fridge, and then we're gonna hit it. Oh yeah, got a little bit of sunshine. Oh yeah, now I'm happy, even more joyous. That's what I needed, I guess. A dose of sunlight. Second dose of sunlight. Got a little bit of that rock and roll auctioning everything that I'm wearing. It's a special October 9th march. I guess we're gonna march to the mountain and go on the drill with that and get it on the left and on the right. And that's just something which we're gonna do now, you know, and the satisfactory, of course, to be satisfied about certain things. And my satisfaction I always get when I work out, train, exercise, and a bit moody, but hey, friends with benefits. Any friends with benefits out there? If you want to be friends with benefits, then we can rock and roll. Androgynous, pansexual artist, Martian artist, athlete, philosopher, geopolitical theoretical analyst, and theorist. Was slightly moody, but I guess as I'm gonna go towards the sun, I'm gonna feel much better, you know. A bit moody, joyous but moody, you know. A bit sore from the workouts, you know. I live a very active lifestyle. I encourage all to work out, train, exercise regularly, and my only stress now is financial, but I gotta be happy, joyous, because when I get back, I'm gonna have those wafers, and I got the crows there cheering on. Pledge your allegiance, legions, or friends with benefits only. Don't waste my time, I will not waste yours. And Hawk Island, Montreal, French. We love our French here, and there is the crow. Yeah, I know, the crow's crowing and telling me a little bit of that. Go dragon, go dragon, go dragon, go dragon. A little bit of that S-O-N-G, the song. I always rock and roll for the train conductors, the butchers, the bakers, the transit operators, and the crow said, go, 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 you know. I guess I got some fans. Nothing to show. If I would have an OnlyFans, well, maybe I will show a little bit of that big rainbow dragon booty, but that's about it. I'm androgynous, pansexual, ask me, I have that Asperger's, so you gotta be 18 plus for that kind of loving, you know. If you're black, white, or rainbow, white or black or rainbow, whatever, you gotta be 18 plus. You wanna be friends with benefits on that level. Gotta turn my head left or right. All of this is a one way. Even if it's a one way, sometimes you still gotta turn your heads left and right, because you never know. Somebody might be visiting and might not know, right? And just turn the street in a way, of course, where we have now to be, you know. So crossing the street brutally with that is something what you're doing now. Oh, I gotta see that Canada. When I see the Canada flag, I show mine here. Gotta show off my Canada flag, you know. See these 4 cars coming, 1, 2, 3, 4. I think there's a fifth one in the back. All these cars are now, I'm calculating their velocity. The velocity is of course the speed and the distance, so I guess I'm just gonna stretch left or right, and of course interjection, of course, to train and exercise the brain by doing some mathematics. So let's revise a bit what we have been doing in the past. We are gonna do a revision. So all these cars, they have a constant. The constant never changes, right? So the constant mathematics, what is the constant? So the constant is how much you would eat, consume per 100 kilometers. Per 100 kilometers, you know? Oh, you got some, if you want, some people can take that, cook that. If they want to cook a little bit of that good, you can get it on that. Oh, there's something there, but that's some food. I got food at home, so I ate a bit, so now I'm good for the food. So I don't really know, but I don't really need to take that. I don't know how to cook that much, but maybe when I come back now, it's gonna be later on. So let's drill it and let's go towards the sun. So how are we gonna go towards the sun? Look at that beauty, beauty, beauty. So maybe go in a zigzag. Let's see, this is one way also, so turn your head left or right. So check out those. Oh yeah, there's a drop of my joy right here. This is yeah. Oh yeah, this is nice. That's nice. That is of course nice with that, and that is just what it is, you know. And the niceties of the flowers there, you know. That flowers is something when we gotta get, of course, a little bit on that blue, you know, and they got a little bit of that beauties here and there, left and right. And hey, it's always something which I gotta quantify myself, you know. The yellow flowers are nice, and I gotta appreciate a little bit of that good. See that good pumpkins. Oh, I gotta get out of the way, wait for the children to cross here, and I gotta move by the side there on them. And see, look at that. See, you gotta see a little bit of that rock and roll. So they're happy and joyous. I guess that's what matters there. Going out running on the streets. I stopped because I said, oh, if they're running, I got the backpack and I'm a bit clumsy, so for their safety and security, I paused and waited for the children to traverse, you know. Children, they're innocent and their safety first, you know, in the relationship where we are now. Beautiful yellow flowers there. I hear the crow again. I love some crows. You know just how I rock and roll. When I see the yellow flowers, I gotta sing me some of that loving. And I know you gotta be. Oh yeah, I love yellow flowers a lot. Eh? You already know that red is my favorite color, red. But of course, when it comes to flowers, I love yellow flowers, and I love the fact that we have public flowers here. It always embellishes my march. So now what we're gonna do is what I'm trying, of course, to do is basically, of course, go, of course, to be as much sun as I can. And that one's it's a really nice there for, of course, for Halloween, you know. There's just nice, of course, there for Halloween, and you got some more flowers there for the children there. That is just beautiful there for Halloween, you know. Look at that, and that is gorgeous. Somebody had made that for that, and there's just something where we have to salute, eh? Because I wish the candies would be reduced, but the candies are not reduced. So here we go, marching to the mountain, and joyous, would have been moody, less moody now, you know. Please don't do that, don't pollute, it's public, eh? So don't leave that trash there, put it in the garbage, and, you know, put those in the garbage where they belong. Because there might be children that might touch and play with that, you know. Passing here in the neighborhood, the children might swallow those, and you know, that's toxic for them, and we're trying to prevent, you know, because you never know, they might come playing or running around here in the neighborhood, and they might say, hey, what's that, and play with it and put it in the mouth, you know. So we don't kind of want that at all, right, to be a reality for us to live with, you know. So that reality for us to live with, and the consequential for the children's safety, of course, to know to be on the side of all the things which we have now, in the domain of where we are now, to live as individual sovereign citizens. And of course, as individual sovereign citizens, we have responsibilities. Myself now, I'm going to my second home. I have the responsibility, of course, to for my other citizens, of course, for my other citizens to be in harmony. So right here, for example, I gotta watch it and turn my head left and right, because you never know, they can come from any side there, and they could just press the accelerator instead of the brake, which will cause a direct type of, from both sides or from four sides, it could be from left and right or east and west or north and south. And then you have double trouble, the problems with the cars and the driving. So there's just something which we gotta be prudent about ourselves. And as we march here, as I'm going to the neighborhood and all my facultiness and all the distributions where we are now, to be loving on the side, and all that loving on the side aside, we also got the safety and security protocols which we must follow, or we have to abide by. Oh, I'm gonna get a little bit of sun. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right here I get a little bit of sun. Well, I'm gonna wait for that and do a little bit of sun salutation. So I have Asperger's, so I'm a bit weird and strange and bizarre and odd in the social sphere. We lack, myself as an individual who lives with this neurological mental divergent condition. Again, Asperger's is not a disease, it's a neurological mental divergent condition which has these characteristics which are peculiar, odd, So those odd, peculiar characteristics are, of course, that we see the world differently. And so because we see the world differently, I got 11 seconds. Gotta check it for the turning. You're turning on the side there, Gotta watch it 4 seconds and gotta cross prudently, So crossing prudently, because you never know, That is just something where we have to be in the streets. And you got the bus drivers there. They were on a big strike. They were on a big strike. So their strike, I guess, kind of ended. I'm not sure if they came to a conclusion necessarily, but I know that they are at least partially ended their strike. So I know that in part they kind of ended their strike. I'm just gonna go to the washroom real quick. Just gonna go to the washroom real quick. I need to go. Yeah, I really needed to go to the washroom, so I'm gonna HYDR88 here. Usually I gonna wait a few seconds and hydrate all the way, because we got some mileage to get to my second home, the Mountain Mall, so HYDR88. Oh yeah. Yeah, that was good. Oh, I gotta come out. Sometimes I gotta come out. Sometimes I gotta come here. I'm gonna just use some of that disinfectant. Oh yeah, they have it here. Just to disinfect my hands, although I washed them. So I disinfect my hands. Hands are disinfected. I always encourage you all to keep the protocols of COVID, The protocols of COVID, which are necessary, something which I urge all to do. Please, please, please. Keep the protocols of COVID as much as you can. It's something that is a good habit to keep and maintain, just like my physical fitness. I always say my fitness journey begins now, today. And the reason I'm passing by here is, that I love these gardens here. brings me some joy whenever I pass there, and even these beauties. And I love the flowers here. So we're gonna start here by this side of the garden, and we're gonna go around it. See, look at these. Isn't these just beautiful here? It's October 9th, and wow, isn't it? I got it right here. Hey, what do you say? What do you say? Nice, eh? Look at that. Told you. It was worth it, eh? To pass by here. Look at that. Isn't that just gorgeous? This one also. It just quadruple my smile there. Gotta get a little bit of that rock and roll, and look at these beauties. Eh? These are so nice. Gonna smell them a bit. Oh yeah, they have a little bit of smell, and the children are there playing happily. There's safety, security, and look at those also. Eh? Beautiful flowers all around. Look at those also, eh? The yellow ones, and these ones are just phenomenally beautiful, just gorgeous. Those are just divine. There's the blue and the purple and the white mixed together, and the yellow. See, like 4 colors in those. They look otherworldly, almost CGI created. And even these white there, and of course you got the king and the queen there. Those ones are also the super big ones. They're just gorgeous and beautiful, and you got more here. So I love passing by here. It's just an incredible beauty, which I love of this garden. And I love this. There's the queen, I guess. The queen, eh? Queenie, so beautiful. I love it. These are gorgeous. So these ones also are so nice. Just the vividness of the color there. And that's the king, I guess. Beautiful, gorgeous flowers, and these ones, they're taller, but they're so colorful. Like, they smell a bit. They have a scent, but kind of not so scented. They're not that scented, and then of course all of them are just amazingly beautiful here. So thank you for planting this beautiful garden. I really appreciate every time I pass here, you know. Even these ones, see, look at that. You got some white and some red there, see? White and red. So all of this layer is really nice. Really nice. And you got some yellow there, so I love passing. And you see many videos I pass by the garden here, you know. By the garden here, where I get it on that rock and roll. So now we're gonna try to get a little bit of peek of these. And now how we gonna get more sun? I think I'm gonna have to start heading a bit north instead of the usual heading west. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna turn here, and then we're gonna go north. Yeah, so that gave me a little bit of dose of joy. And of course exercising always feel better. And you know, I was home, I was doing some geopolitical work, lots. There was lots to digest. The meeting between Kanye and Trump, of course. If you don't know that, I am not just an artist, but an athlete, an independent theoretical analyst and theorist. And even these black ones there, they're nice blacks. Black ones, beautiful black flowers there. They're kind of nice. Oh, my auntie there, I gotta get out of the way. Gotta get out of the way for my auntie, let her pass, and get a little bit of that dimension for their security and safety, because I'm in the public, so I have added responsibilities, duties, and obligations, which I don't usually have. Oh yeah, I know. If I go north, I'm gonna get more sun, so I'm gonna go north, and then I'm gonna go north, and then we're gonna take a right side, and then we're gonna come back by that side. So that's gonna be the trajectory for today. I guess we're gonna change it a bit, because we have the regular kind of traditional ways where we march to the mountain. I guess a little bit today we can switch it up a bit. And you know, I have this routine with my Asperger's, and I have this neurological mental divergent condition known as HFA, high functioning autism, also known as Asperger's. And that HFA is that Asperger's which we have today. And that is something which we have to do, and we have to do night to that, and of course that is just the preposition what we got now to do on the left and on the right, of course the manifestations what we are now to do. So that is just something where we got to be leveled about in all the domains where we have now to get the propositions and to discuss, of course, the realities of living as a neurodivergent in the neurotypical world, because you constitute the 99% of the population. And if I see children, I see children with their parents and people with elders, and then I do the 4 steps to the right or 4 steps to the left, and then I get back on the road because I leave them space, to cross the streets, as I have those wide shoulders. So for their safety, their security, always drive it in on the left and on the right whenever I can, and the dimensions to do. So, that's what I wanted, to get a little bit of more sun, and I think by the time I reach there, so there's a more garden in a way, and that's how we drill. Is that a helicopter? Helicopter? Turn your heads left and right. Helicopter chopper in the sky, Draconis. There's another garden that I love, and I love it here. Gonna post again. Auntie's garden. There we go. Which direction is the helicopter going? How many miles an hour? Know that it's going southeast, 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 southeast. However, for me to calculate now, my brain is going a little bit of mathematics, but I would have to know the altitude. Gorgeous flowers there. I would have to know the altitude, right? And I would have to kind of estimate the movement from the altitude's perspective, and of course correlated to that is a moving point and a moving object. It would be, I would have to say at this point in time, from the visualization of those 4 seconds, that is going approximately about, I'll say 113 miles an hour, 113 about, but I really don't know for sure. It's just a speculation. Cuties, hey, look at that beautiful pot of flowers there, like a barrel cut and then put into with a tree. I find it kind of nice. So yeah, I'm glad I took this route because I'm getting to get a little bit of sun with that. And I gotta say, I gotta appreciate every day, so I have my dream, the dancing goddess and the dragon kingdom, which is fundamentally a call for a public-private partnership, a PPP, public-private partnership across the North American Collective. It's always for the 10, it's always for the 10, the 50, and the 3, It's always for the 10, it's always for the 10, the 50 and the 3, and that's how we rock and roll it with that drill, Always for the 10, the 50, and the 3, and that's how we're gonna get, of course, on that drill. And that is something when we have to get doing. I have to disinfect this. See, I thought I picked it up because it was here to put it in the recycling, but look what I found. Gotta get it for that. Move out of the way. For my auntie, 4 steps back, 4 steps right, and if I found this on the floor right there, it was gonna get crushed. $2027, good until 2027. Made in Thailand. Now this is an N.A.C.W.P, weird how we are number. See, there's a number there. This is N.A.C.W.P-ness right here. You see that weird. So if you see an N.A.C.W.P behavior, if you see somebody inspecting closely like this the objects, and I've been doing it for years. So if you see somebody just inspecting objects like this, close to the head, to the face, like this, that is somebody possibly who has I'm just gonna disinfect my hands and disinfect this with my disinfectant, of course, because that disinfectant is, of course, something which we have to use. And before that, I'm gonna go check those gardens there because they're gorgeous. So all of that disinfectant there where we have now is, of course, on the left and on the right where we are. To get on that translation, we're gonna get turning heads left and right, left and right, left and right, and we're gonna, of course, disinfect the hands, and that's how we're gonna get doing with that. So we're gonna disinfect the hands with this, which is a sanitizer, kills germs and bacteria. So we're gonna put it to use here, just not that much. It's a bit thick, so let's use it. I'm gonna disinfect this product because I don't know who touched it, and it's new. I know if it was donated. It says best September 30th, 2027. So hey, any friends with benefits, friends with benefits, friends with benefits, friends with benefits. There you go. That's disinfected. Clean, clean, clean. Rub the hand, the sanitizer, antibacterial gel on this. So this is beautiful here. Look at that. I gotta pose with this. I salute so much beauty here. I love 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 different color layers. See? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Isn't just gorgeous? 1, 2, 3, and 4 colors. Makes me think of that Napolitan ice cream. And here, the same. 1, 2, 3, and 4 colors. Plus the green, I guess. Beautiful. Just amazingly gorgeous. Makes me think of the forgotten goddess temple which I will to build. You know, it's just beautiful. Wow, wow, wow. Good job. Really a good 9. A good 9. A good 9, you know. Yeah, that's really nice. We have voting coming on here in Montreal, so I guess we're gonna geopolitic a little bit of that, you know. Always good for the rock and roll to get some of that geopolitic going on and see another voting here. So I'm gonna discuss a little bit about Asperger's. HFA, high functioning autism, is the neurological condition with which I live with, and of course that neurological condition with which I live with is, of course, my condition. It is not a mental illness. It is not a disease. It's not an illness at all. It's a neurodivergence, and this neurodivergence makes us Aspies more weird, more awkward, you know. Socially, we can be strange, comprehending social dimensions, you know. Comprehending social dimensions. So the comprehension of those social dimensions are, of course, more dangerous for us. They're more difficult, you know. They're more difficult. So we have difficulties in social interactions. With interacting socially can be more awkward and different for us in how we interact, you know, the comprehension of social dynamics, understanding social dynamics, and comprehension of non-written social cues. I find that beautiful there. Non-written, you know, social non-written cues, they can be more difficult, and gotta watch it here I'm gonna get out of the way. Gotta get out of the way, you know, because you never know, the brakes malfunction, and at the end of the day, you know, money is just metal on wheel, you know. Metal on wheels, you know. Money is to buy, sell, you know. Tough economic times, at the end of the day, is the life, you know. Life which is more important, and now I got added responsibilities, you know. Duties and obligations, because I'm in the public, so I have these added responsibilities now, you know, which are for myself and for the other as an individual sovereign imperial citizen. The coming of our empire, the 63 always for the 10, the 50, and the 3 always. Putting these marching steps of rock and roll dancing for the firefighters, butchers, bakers, nurses, electricians, the plumbers, welders, construction workers, those daycare workers to change some of those diapers, you know. Gotta think about the daycare workers too, who change some diapers. And I got a peekaboo at this beautiful little car here. What is the car? Is it a mini special? Quite cute. I love the green on the camera. The green is kind of shows off a bit differently, but it's a very, very beautiful green. It's quite cute. A little mini car, you know. Got a little mini, tiny. I guess for somebody who can, when you have potholes, it might be more difficult, you know, to get on those potholes, to get on the drill. And that's something which we have to be mindful, you know, in the driving of the season and the terrains here. Of course, that we have winter, so winter, and depending on what type of winter, of course. But I guess that's a consideration which we must have in the matters thereof. So of course, back to Asperger's. I use both Asperger's and HFA, so they're one and the same, just so that you know, of course, that they're one and the same. So Asperger's and HFA, high functioning autism, they're one and the same. They have merged in about 2013, 2014. So basically when I use HFA, or when I say Asperger's, you have to know that I'm making a reference to the same neurological, mental, divergent condition. Right? Oh, I got 4 seconds. 4 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Just in time. Just in time. Sometimes that's all you need, I guess. A few seconds, and I need to go to the washroom again, so I'm gonna have to deviate here somewhere. Because I really, really have to go. Otherwise, I'm gonna pee on me, so it's not gonna be good. Maybe because I'm hydrating lots with my physical activity, you know, so intense physical activities that I do. It is a small one. I really have to go again. Because when I went, I guess I didn't do it all. I was only half or something. So maybe you're gonna see, maybe. Oh yeah, there it is. Gonna have to go in the bushes. No choice. Sorry, fellow citizens. I'm gonna, nothing to see anyways there, my little. But I have to go because the closest one is far away. I'm not gonna be able to hold it. I'll forget it even now. So what I'm gonna do right here in the bushes. Hope nobody can see anything here. Oh yeah. Whew. Yeah, I had to do in the bushes. I had no choice. I was gonna go all over me. And although there were 4 little drops that kind of touched my underwear, but I guess they added value. I want to buy underwear. Auctioning them for $1 million, my socks for $1 million, and my pants for $1 million, and my shirt for $1 million. Everything that I'm wearing $1 million to give half to my anonymous friend, because I'm just financially stressed. My only stress now really is financial, and whew, that was close, really. That was close. I thought I was gonna do a big sip and pee, you know, on me, but thank God it's good I didn't. It's just water anyways. I know it's not a big deal. If you have to, sometimes you just, you know, it happens to the best of us, I guess. And when you gotta go, and then you gotta rush it, and you might scream, I gotta go. And that's about how we rock and roll with that one, eh? So Asperger's autism is a neurological mental divergent condition, which is not a mental illness. So when I utilize and use HFA, high functioning autism, is one and the same as Asperger's, right? Is one and the same as Asperger's, because they have merged in 2013, 2014. So of course they merged. They're one and the same. So they're both the same thing when I say high functioning autism, high functioning autism, HFA, or when I say Asperger's, you have to know that basically is the same thing, because they have merged since 2013, 2014. So I'm part of the half who are unofficially diagnosed. Although I'm semi-officially diagnosed because for years and years and years, or at least since 2016 about, so 9 years, have been told by several individuals and citizens who have experience working with people with autism and Aspies, and with neurodivergence. I've been told, and I guess I am semi-officially diagnosed. I would categorize myself as semi-officially diagnosed, and for years and years and years and years, for about 5 years, from about, a long time, 2016 to about 2021, 2022, I always refused to accept it until about 3.5 years ago, and all indications that after education and self-education, and that I learned to not be ashamed about it, not be reticent about it, but to fully accept it, and it's flag spotted. When I spot the flag, you know what I do? When I spot the flag, I see it. I see flag is spotted, and you gotta turn your heads left or right, and that's what it is with that, and that's how we gotta get drilling. I see. Oh, there's double flags. There's twins, twins there. So that's what we gotta see. Flag spotted. That's how we gotta get drilling with that. Flag spotted. See, double trouble, twins. Don't ask me when I have that on. Probably decades ago, but when I got it tatted up, just probably a long time ago. What you got, and that's just something which we live with, and that's just the neurodivergence, or the perspective where we have now to be interrelated, or the communicational aspects where we have now is that the interdependencies and the manifestation of our well-being and wellness, and of course interrelations, that we have to build bridges. Because I don't have of course bad negative feelings against neurotypicals. You, the vast majority of the population, constitute 99% of the population, compared to us who are about less than 1%. So there's only half who are officially diagnosed. Only half are officially diagnosed, right? So I'm part of that half. Although I say I'm semi-officially diagnosed. Hey, look at these cuties. 1, 2, 3, 4 clusters. They're quite beautiful. Hey, so nice. Just gorgeous. Love it, love it, love it. Whole brightness. So I'm part of the half was unofficially diagnosed. And then, of course, the lovely, lovely, lovely red, bright red. Look at that divine artist of the goddess. Mother Nature's just divine artist, the best artist and scientist in many ways. So I guess goddess also, goddess also made me, of course, to be in certain circumstances where we have now, and that is just something where we got, So that is, of course, now to discuss this neurodivergence where we have now. Neurodivergence where we have is something where we have to get going on that, and is something which we have now to be proponent about. That we are open about being neurodivergent, and I don't have negative feelings, negative emotions, hostilities vis-a-vis the 99% of you who are neurotypicals. And of course I suffered, struggled, and especially the employment part. I had many jobs, many employments. Aspies, the unemployment rate for Aspies is 80%, So it's very high and elevated, super high and elevated. It's just catastrophic if you think about it. For Aspies, people who have HFA, it's one of the same thing. It's about 80%, even more. 80, can you imagine? 4 out of 5. So it's 11 times higher than for you, the neurotypicals, with which myself as an individual sovereign Aspie, I always have to build bridges, whether we build small bridges, medium-sized bridges, large bridges, or extra large bridges. Just like when you order a pizza, coffee, fries, you might order a small coffee or fry or pizza, a medium coffee or fry or pizza, large coffee or fry or pizza, or extra large coffee or fry or pizza. You might order, of course, those in different ways when you might order them, and you might, of course, order a small pizza and an extra large coffee, or vice versa. Right, so these are just the dimensions, of course, where you have to. These are just, of course, the dimensions where you have to be. So all that categorization, of course, is implementing the relationships that we have, of course, to be now, that these relationships are, of course, incongruent to, of course, the parallel administrative layers, of course, of the domain where we are now, to be in all the sides, and, of course, all those areas of life where we are, of course, in the categorization, of course, to be together in this life-affirming manner, you know. Because I'm a joyous Aspie, financially stressed but joyous Aspie who's encouraging all to work out, train, exercise. It is my special interest, you know. It is part of my routine and rituals for years and years and years and years. You know, it took me some years to lose about 80 to 93 pounds. And the problem with Aspie is also we encounter high depression and suicidal rates. And I was there, you know. I was depressed and suicidal, beautiful, for a few years. And I crossed Canada coast to coast in 2017. That event made me change my life. I turned my life around. Crossing Canada made me establish a strong esprit de corps with my fellow Canadians. A strong esprit de corps with my fellow Canadians, you know. So I established a strong esprit de corps with my fellow Canadians, North Americans, because, you know, I'm also a mystic, not just an artist, athlete, philosopher, but I believe in reincarnations. So due to the fact that I believe in reincarnations is, of course, the relationships that we have, of course, to be in the domain where we have now. That, of course, due to these reincarnations and, of course, establishment, of course, where we are, of course, the domain where we live, of course, to be in the categorization of having gratitude for certain things of today's world, which I guess due to my reincarnations, and sometimes was born a man, a woman, a woman, a man, a woman, a man, a woman, a man, man, a woman, woman, a man, man, a woman, woman, man, woman, man, man, a woman, woman, a man, man, a woman. And of course, so I was born a man, a woman, a woman, a man. You get that 50-50 now. There's a stop. It's a one way, but on the other side, there's no stop. See? So there's only a stop here. So you also got to turn your heads left and right if you cross the street that way, because they can come from that way without a stop. You know, they don't have to stop there. So many past lives, many incarnations. Sometimes I was born a woman, sometimes a man, sometimes a woman, a man. You get that 50-50 now. 50-50. Androgynous and rainbow dragon is priestess. Hana, keep my name out of your mouth as I'm rebirthing Adrian Hana Dragon. If it's not for a blessing, otherwise that'll be pestilence. Keep my holy sacred name out of your mouth if it's not for a blessing. Otherwise, let it be pestilence. Or we gotta get a little bit of that drill, you know. So it's always something which we have, of course, now in the Concordia to get, of course, all that appellation and all, of course, the domain where we have now to be. All this situational awareness. Gotta watch it on the side and getting on the left and crossing the street brutally, you know. Brutally. Look at that. Beautiful. Beautiful black. It's a nice black flowers here, eh? I like the black ones also here. So if you're black, white, or rainbow, white, black, or rainbow, white, black, or rainbow, a man or woman, you gotta be 18 plus. Friends with benefits, we do that, are loving. You know? Don't waste my time, I won't waste yours. I'm gonna card you. Card you just like when you go to a club or when you go get some of that. If you buy into, hey, look at these also. If you buy some, here, cannabis is legal, eh? If you buy alcohol, if you go to a club, I purchased 3.5 years ago, I still have leftovers. I don't even know if it's good, because I don't smoke much. I don't know if I did before, because maybe I was a junkie before winter 2014, January 2014, February. I have retrograde amnesia, memory loss, but thank God is God. Memory loss doesn't affect linguistic skills, mathematical skills. I'm a polyglot and I'm above average in math, and my special interest in geopolitics as an Aspie is geopolitics, and I have trouble remembering my life prior to winter 2014. Sometimes memory comes back, it's just a blackout. It's weird. It's like a blackout. Sometimes I say, maybe it's because I was an alcoholic, or maybe I was a junkie. Maybe I was a junkie, you know. Maybe I was a junkie, you know. Maybe I was a junkie. I remember I survived a vicious surprise attack in Montreal in the metro. Hey, look how that is nice, eh? kind of in between. You have a line there go in, and then another line go in, like 4 lines, and then you have it in the middle. I kind of find it very nice how they did it. See, it's one line to go in. You go in 1, 2, 3, 4. See 1, 2, 3, and 4. See 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then you have it there in the side. You know, so that's what it is with that. Quite nice. Good job. Love it. That's for the Forgotten Goddess temple. She doesn't need us to build her temples, of course, but of course, building her temples would be nice. Her temple in North America. It's my will, and volition, and desire, and love to do that. So back to memory loss. Sometimes it might come back. I don't know if it's due to... I don't know if it's due to having... Maybe I was an alcoholic. I don't drink much. I don't do drugs. I mean, stuff like that I don't do. My last cigarette was when I crossed Canada coast to coast, when I was in Vancouver, I believe, in 2017, like in August. So it's been more than 8 years, I guess. I wasn't really smoking, but I just, for some reason, I had like lit a cigarette. I don't think I've puffed it really, but it's just kind of like that for conversation, I guess. So, but I survived a vicious surprise attack. I was attacked by surprise. It wasn't no sportsmanship. It wasn't no let's go, let's duel, let's declare war, nothing like that. Of course, nothing like that, but it's of course something what we have, of course, to be transmission about, and gotta get it on that rock and roll for the beneficent, of course, of all those domains where we have now, of course. It's something which they do and which they have there, but it's all those which I lived, you know, an experience which I lived. I gave myself a new deadline. Look at those beauties. I gave myself a new deadline. Beautiful black, beautiful black. Beautiful black, they're beautiful black, eh? Dark pitch black, and with the colorful ones there. So these are nice as well. Nice. Thank you, public workers, for embellishing the city. And you have a little bit of sunset there. We're not gonna go towards the sunset. We're heading towards the mountain. My second home that way. And here's kind of my old neighborhood begins over there. My old neighborhood. With a new neighborhood here, you know, that's something which we got to get on that goal. That is just something what we have to be doing now, you know. So I was viciously attacked by surprise. I survived a vicious surprise attack, you know. I survived a vicious surprise attack in the Montreal Metro. In the Montreal Metro. I was hit in the head a few times. I don't know if it was with an object or something, but I hit my head on the concrete. I had a dislocated right arm, right shoulder, and that was bloodied up. I was bloodied up. What is that? I'm not sure. I was bloodied up. I went to the Jewish General Hospital, and they cracked back my right arm, and I was put on some meds. And that was just surviving, you know. So I used to live over here. Still on the island in a very small, tiny underground basement. It was like a Thai prison cell. I always say it was like a small prison cell. Like a small prison cell. It wasn't really a prison cell, but it was, because I didn't even have a bathtub, eh? Turn your heads left and right before you cross the street. Prudently, left, right, because this is a little bit of a dangerous area corner there. And I used to live, actually, that street, further down south, north, south is that way. So further north on that street, here, this street, Clan Randall. So here's kind of my old neighborhood, new neighborhood, old neighborhood, new neighborhood. This street kind of separates between my new neighborhood and old neighborhood. And there's nothing that I will to go back to, just, of course, living for today and with hope for tomorrow. And the crows cheer me on to the mountain. And you know, I have to go again. Yeah, I have to pee again. It is what it is, I guess. When you gotta go, eh? It's just because I'm peeing. I think I'm just not peeing enough at the same time, you know, and it's filtering, I guess. And I gotta go again. I guess. And I have to do it here in the corner, so wherever nobody's minding my business here. Oh, yeah. Yep. It's gonna be, okay, it's gonna be there. Okay, where next there? Okay. Yeah, I really gotta go again. So that is something which I'm about to pee on myself again. So I really gotta go. Hey, there's a nice art here. So I'm gonna go somewhere where I can relieve myself in peace, you know. With a corner. I guess there somewhere. That's nice. Oh yeah, here in between. I really had to go. I found a tight corner where it was safe. But yeah, so I survived that vicious surprise attack years and years ago. I have to go retrieve my archives at the Jewish General Hospital because that's where I went. And of course, until October 31st, I've given myself four different things to do by October 31st. One of them is, of course, to retrieve my archives. One of them, of course, is to retrieve my archives at the Jewish General Hospital. The other is, of course, to clean my room thoroughly. The other one is to write documents and invitations for the December 24th, 25th Summit, World Peace Summit, and for the 63 fusion thereof of the North American Collective into the Imperial Democratic Republic, and to propose again for the third time, because those are the four things. I'm proposing again. I got 2 no's the first time. I guess I'm gonna get maybe a yes, maybe not. I'm not sure. Possibly gonna have to ask, and then we're gonna ask, of course, to see if we can get. If not, of course, maybe I'm not gonna get a. See, this is quite interesting. See here, look at that. So this is electric. See, an electric. It says designed and made in Canada by Add Energy there. See, that's why we got to work for the North American Collective. This is an N.A.C.W.P thing, you know, focusing on strange details like that. We're going to get into Asperger's a bit. I just want to finalize, of course, the dimensions that myself as a neurodivergence I live on a daily basis. So, look at beautiful black and white, beautiful black and white flowers there. You love that deep black, pitch black with a bright white. Those are, of course, the things which we have, of course, to be concomitantly about. Of course, in all the relationships where we are now, we Aspies might also focus on small details such as the writings on that. See, this was dated on September 2019, and you have some numbers there, serial numbers, and you have some product numbers, and you have some service numbers, and you have some other numbers. So those are all things which are more internal as an industry standard or as a general, of course, concordiate, of course, of what other things are in the situational awareness where we are now to be involved. So that surprise attack, I'm not sure when it was. Basically, I'm not sure what time, when it was exactly. So I survived that vicious surprise attack years and years ago. So that's why I have to retrieve the archives. I wonder how much is rent here. Is it 3.5? I'm not looking to move because I used to live in that very moldy place, and very small, very moldy, was lots of moldy. Got something in my, well, not. I used to live in a very moldy place. Moldy underground basement. Very moldy, small underground. It was like a tight prison cell, you know? But it wasn't really a prison cell. But it was very small, very moldy. Lots of mold. I didn't even have a bathtub. The bathroom was so small and tiny. It was really like a prison cell. I served my time, and I moved out of there 10 years ago. 10 years ago and 4 months, more than 10 years ago, and to a better place. And I served my time, and maybe I was safe to do some good deeds, balance the scales, I guess. I guess I did, of course, in the relationship where we are now, but I kind of did, and in many ways, you know. some good deeds. Look at that beautiful sunset. The sky is so beautiful. Sometimes you just gotta look up and say, wow, you know, we got so much beauty in the world, and we can always increase in acts of goodness and kindness, you know. Goodness and kindness. That's the message, I guess, fundamentally, you know. And if you're a billionaire, and give some charity and increase in acts of goodness with kindness, you know. It's always good. It's always live for today with me. You know, as I died of COVID, I had COVID. It was pretty severe. I thought I was gonna die in 2020, March 2020, right at the beginning I had it. I got triple vax. That's why my videos, I always encourage all to keep the protocols in the public, at least the hygienic protocols. I know we tend to revert to old habits, and most of us, not all, there's change. People change, eh? People change. I certainly changed, and I certainly have my routines. As an N.A.C.W.P, you know, sometimes change can be more difficult, but if I look back over the past 11 years, I changed at least 4 major times. But yes, for years and years and years and years, I have my routines, you know, because N.A.C.W.Ps, we have ritual-like structured routines. We kind of follow certain routines and patterns, and me is, you know, rock and roll, geopolitics, fitness, working out, training, exercising, and going to the mountain, you know, going to the mountain, working out, training, exercising, and going to the mountain. And geopolitics, the study the analysis of geopolitics, and the theorizing, creating defensive protocol strategies, of course, for the North American Collective. It's also something that I do on the daily, and for years and years and years and years. So I'm curious. I have to go. I gave myself, like I said, a new deadline by October 31st. By October 31st, which is coming, because it's the 9th day, you know, it's the 9th day. So I guess in 22 days, more than 3 weeks, because 3 times 7, that's 21. So today is the 9th. 31 minus 9, that's 22. So I guess I got time, 22 days for today. And that is, of course, just where we are to get, of course, the archives to see when was it that I survived that vicious surprise attack. I thought I was gonna die, I guess, because I guess they tried to take me out. They failed, and I was hit in the head and hit my head on the concrete, was bloodied up, had a dislocated right arm shoulder, and went to the Jewish General Hospital, and there they kind of cracked back my arm. And see, here you get those 4 antennas. See, and you got, I guess, audio and camera. And my plan is, of course, to have all across the North American Collective, you know, to have it on the plan to go, and to have it established, of course, for the concomitantly here, of course, all the 63 for total SSD, security, service, and defense. That's how we're gonna go on to for the security, service, and defense, and we're gonna consequently, of course, be for SSD internally. And see that camera there, and that audio with those 4 antennas. And in a parallel life is the year darkness 2029. It is December 8th, 2029, and I build supercomputer satellites in that parallel timeline. Israel and Mexico are part of NATO, and we build together transnational satellite systems for total security, total service, total defense, for total security, total service, total defense across the North American Collective. And that's what we do, that's what we build. And here I'm just gonna enter my own neighborhood a bit, not too much. Here's kind of where my old neighborhood commences, you know. This is where it's at now. Here's kind of my old neighborhood, and this is where we are now. Gonna wait to cross the street, you know, on that British side. And that's what it is with that's what it is. That's what it is, man.
Never learn.
Oh, I'm broke. Let me check.
Business is business.
Let me check. There you go. I'm broke. I don't have much, eh? Let's see. On va voir. Oh, yeah, let's see.
Not by mistaken, like.
There you go.
My story, like I dropped $2 here.
All right, man. Take care, buddy. I guess a little bit of charity, you know, they're gonna, I guess, split it, but just keep it clean, you know. I told them the other day, you know, just for the children, don't leave the stuff. And they said, okay, no problem. I said, just put it in the garbage, guys, because children might, come play, because there's big residential buildings and they might come play with the glass and break it. And they said, oh yeah, you're right, and we're gonna put it in the trash. So they were cooperative. They were cooperative on my insistence the other day, and I've been for years and years and years. So kind of entered my own neighborhood here. I didn't have much to give. I had like 45 cents, I think. No, 55 cents. I'm broke financially. I can't give more than that, but I guess whatever it is, So I used to live over there. Said do good, and I told them no violence, please. I don't like violence. I'm somebody who doesn't like violence. I do not like violence. I don't like violence. I'm somebody who doesn't like violence, and if I would be a billionaire or whatever, I would say, hey, we get this building and get that building. I give you, a chance for rehabilitation. Our brothers and sisters, my fellow brothers and sisters, natives and indigenous, to get a little bit of rehabilitation, beautiful sunset, for them to rehabilitate. That is just something which you gotta look at. That beautiful garden there. Beautiful garden, got a nice one. So for them, of course, to rehabilitate, and that's the whole process which we are to be, to rehabilitate. So of course, for that rehabilitation is something which we have to be doing. If I would be a billionaire, I would say, hey, buy a few buildings here in Montreal, under the Hawk, and say, here's the deal. You get 1 year rent covered. I get somebody to check on you. I'm going to check on the apartments and the building condition. We're going to have cameras, not inside your apartments and rooms, but around them. We're going to monitor and inside and the audio, and we're going to give you guys a chance for your homeless. Here it is. No drugs. No drugs, no booze, or limited booze, limited alcohol, you limit. And we're gonna have audio, video inside and outside, on the perimeter, in the side, of course in the side there, on the left and on the right, and roundabout. And we're gonna give you a deal. For a year, you don't need to pay rent, you clean yourself, you reduce the drugs, you start whatever. You can have maybe a gym, somewhere, a treadmill, and we'll give you some volunteering. You go volunteer across Montreal, food banks, anywhere else, and you get your rent paid for a year, and then we do the revision. I would do that if I would be a billionaire now. I would definitely, do that. Say, hey, here it is, and let's rock and roll with that, because that's the whole point. The criminal rehabilitation, and they know because they kind of know me there in the corner for years and years and years and years. When I had a few pennies, I guess I gave a little bit. Charity, is important. I also receive charity. I got in most of my videos, you see I take food from that fridge, and it helps me for my food security. So I guess now I did a little bit of that food security compensation in my own way. I didn't have much, but I give a little bit, because yesterday I took food from the fridge, and the other day and 4 days ago from that fridge that you can see in one of those videos. So I don't know what they're gonna spend it on, and whatever they're gonna spend it on with that, and get, of course, all the dynamics where we are now to be, and concurrently where we are to be manifesting, on the left and on the right and in the middle, and gotta get it for the left, and for those butchers, the bakers, the nurses, and the doctors, the firefighters, all those involved in the production, distribution of food, Yeah, so it takes a little bit of, I would definitely do it, Definitely do it, but hey, pledge your allegiance to our family. We're pretty much stressed financially, and see, that's where my old neighborhood was, and nothing that I will to go back, but I was depressed and suicidal, I was low, I was rock bottom. Thought I was gonna take my lights out a few years from like 2014, 2017. From like summer end of 2014 till summer 2017. What got me out of depression was crossing Canada coast to coast. Crossing Canada coast to coast, crossing Canada coast to coast. That is, of course, the life, crossing Canada coast to coast, you know. That is, of course, where I got out of depression and being suicidal. And, of course, there's some things which we have to do together, conquer mentally where we are. Of course, to manifest all the relationships where we are now, to be in the civilizational complex that we live in. And, of course, all that domain is us being here as individual sovereign citizens, and myself with this neurological mental divergent condition known as Asperger's, being an Asp, you know, being that I suffered, struggled, and like I said, I don't like violence, and I made them promise me several times, the beggars, brothers and sisters, beggars in the corner there, that no violence, and they did. So that is something that I don't like, violence, and I'm intense, I'm concentrated, I'm super focused, you know, energetic, sporty, all that. I love that, sports and sportsmanship. Dancing is my favorite sport, you know, although I love gridiron and boxing, please, NFL and National Football League, NHL, National Hockey League, NBA, National Basketball Association, MLB. Please, please, please reduce the cost of the tickets. Reduce the cost of the tickets and give some tickets to the public workers, you know, pick up the garbage, pick up the trash, pick up the recycling, compost day to day, Thursday for my neighborhood. And I had the opportunity to work on the compost years and years and years ago. You know, I had the opportunity to work on the compost years ago. I was delivering the bins and making the delivery of the bins with that, and see how nice white flowers there they are and clustered. So I was delivering the bins and doing a little bit of information with that, and there's just something which we gotta rock and roll, you know. So there's something which we gotta get on that drill, you know. So there's just something which we have now to do. And of course the appellations, of course, informators where we are now, you know, of all these domains where we got to be drilling and making it up on top of the mountain. Already on the mountain now, Mount Royal. Already on the mountain now, Mount Royal, you know, where we're getting on the peak known as West Mount, but the whole mountain is known as Mount Royal. So see beautiful buildings here and construction workers. When I see these buildings, I always gotta make a call to build a 444. Let's discuss them now that we're on the topic. So I will to build with your help, support, and my trillions of kisses, because that's what I got most, you know. Trillions of kisses created from the forgotten goddess. Trillions of kisses created from the forgotten goddess. Trillions of kisses credited from the forgotten goddess, GODDSS, you know. Trillions of kisses. That's what I got the most. Then marching steps, then rock and roll, and then lots of that geopolitical theorizing analysis. And that's most of my work revolves around my art as an artist, athlete, having created the general integrated total body training system, and having, look at that beautiful, the sun is always rising, always setting somewhere in the world. There is always a sunset and a sunrise. As I'm gonna cross on the other street. What a beauty. See part of the mountain ranges there in the back, and you can see how it goes down. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful sunset, just a flaming orange. And now the sun is rising somewhere, sun is setting. And when I see this building, and every time I pass by here, the building parallel with those beautiful 3 and 3, that's 6 beautiful flowers. I gotta pass a little bit, check it out. These are really gorgeous, I gotta say. Hey, look at these. Just beautiful, eh? Whole cluster. Yeah, really nice. Really nice. They're identical, they look very nice. And this is of course the building Colosseum, which of course my call to build the Colosseum, the Imperial People Colosseum, of course, is the building thereof, of course, that yours truly wishes to build. The Imperial People's Colosseum, you know, something where we have, of course, to be in the dimensions where we are now, you know. So those are, of course, the levels, the four buildings which yours truly will to build, you know. Yours truly wills to build, and one of them is this massive structure to be 11 times bigger than the Caesar Superdome. Before that, the Caesar Superdome used to be known as the... Forgot. It changed names several times, eh? In Louisiana, New Orleans, there's the Caesar Superdome, which before it was known as the Mercedes-Benz Dome. And before that, it was known as the Louisiana Superdome. So anyways, it changed names several times. Several Super Bowls were fought, played, battled out there. Super Bowl 47 was fought, battled out there. Super Bowl 47 has several nicknames. Hardball Ball, aka Blackout Ball. Hardball Ball, aka Blackout Ball. That is one of the nicknames of that Super Bowl, and it's one of my favorites. Where the 49ers, of course, lost to the Ravens. They lost not by much, by only a few points. 3 points, and of course that loss was making them, of course, losing on the ground. That Super Bowl 47 is one of my top 5 favorite Super Bowls, and of course it was battled out, fought in that arena stadium known today as the Caesar Superdome, which again had several names before that, but it changed names just like I changed names myself. Nothing that I will to go back, but living for today with hope and dreams for tomorrow, especially a dream for the mass public pawnship, being the dancing goddess and the dragon kingdom thereof. So now that we are on the subject, the 4 buildings which I will to construct and build are on the Canadian-US border, the Imperial People's Colosseum, to be 11 times bigger than that arena, Super Bowl arena, where several Super Bowls were played and battled out, of which one is my top favorite, Super Bowl 47, aka Hardball Ball, aka Blackout Ball, aka Bro Bowl, because it has several nicknames. Super Bowl 47. So to build this massive structure, let's go rock and roll and build it. And me and Donald Trump, we're gonna inaugurate it, because you know I have been Emma will continue to challenge Donald Trump to a boxing match ever since 2018. Ever since 2018, of course, I have been and will continue to challenge Donald Trump to a boxing match, and that is just what we have, of course, now to be because we're, of course, on the side of the parallels, and of course, to build that superstructure, which is gonna be built, and me and Donald Trump are gonna fight in a sportsmanship boxing match, because you know I got those red gloves in the backpack. That red backpack, thank you, my anonymous friend, who gifted me, beautifully, gorgeous. Gifted me the gloves, red gloves, by which I will continue to challenge Donald Trump to a boxing match, and those gloves were gifted circa 2018, and I have been and will continue to challenge Donald Trump ever since that time to a boxing match, ever since 2018, and you know, Granddaddy Trump, that's not the way to invite Canadians. And keep in mind that I was born in the United States 3 times post 70-76. Once I was born a woman post 70-76, twice a man, and served in the same United States Armed Forces 156 years. 156 years. The wars were apart by circa 156 years, and of course the same United States Armed Forces which I served in, and I fought in those 2 separate wars, which were 156 years apart. And those wars were 156 years apart. So of course in concomitant, of course, to all the appellations and all where we are now, of course, in the domain that we are, of course, to be in about the building, of course, also of the Forgotten Goddess Temple, And of course, Forgotten Goddess Temple to be 11 times bigger than the St. Joseph's Oratory. St. Joseph's Oratory, which was of course built. We're gonna build the Forgotten Goddess Temple to be 11 times bigger than that St. Joseph's Oratory, as we're gonna build, of course, the circumscription, of course, on the involvement of thereof. What we are to build now, the Forgotten Goddess Temple and the Imperial People's Coliseum, where me and Donald Trump, we're going to inaugurate it, and we're going to fight, of course, in a boxing match. And that's what it is, of course, now to get it on the go. And that is, of course, all the levels of analysis where we are now, of course, to be concomitantly, of course, in all the domains where we live now, and also to build the House of the Dragon. Pyramid, scarlet, and crimson are, of course, shades of red. Scarlet and crimson are the shade of red, eh? Red is scarlet and crimson are shades of red, basically. So also the House of the Dragon, the pyramid, and where I can have open house. And the fourth one to be the Rainbow People's Palace. The Rainbow People's Palace to be built for my fellow neurodivergent community. For my fellow neurodivergent community and fellow LGBTQ community, because I'm part of both. So this Imperial People's Coliseum, we're gonna have sports events 24/7. Is gonna be sportus in perpetuitis. The first sports events is gonna be me versus Trump, because it's Dragon versus Trump. Since 2018, I have been and will continue to challenge Donald Trump to a boxing match, you know, since 2018. And of course, that is, of course, the domain where Granddaddy Trump made the mistake to impose tariffs on Canadian aluminum and steel first in 2018, and that's when I kind of got into politics. And you know, Granddaddy Trump we're not enemies, but I would have voted for Biden or Kamala Biden. And of course, it's tough economic, financial times. My brothers and sisters in the United States facing similar correlative situation, economic, financial situations as are my fellow Canadians. And my way to fuse Canada, United States best for the future. My way, of course, to fuse Canada, United States best is I put in the marching steps always for the 63. Always for the 63. The truckers, the butchers, the nurses, the doctors, the firefighters, and all those, of course, involved in the production, distribution of food, and all those, of course, now to be who are now in the nurses, you know. The nurses, of course, are also finishing their 11-hour shift. They got 1 more hour to go or 2 more hours to go. They're already 9 hours, 10 hours, of course, whatever the case may be. 11 hours, they're getting on that 12 hours. And they're finishing their shift somewhere now in the 50 states or across the 13 somewhere in the Canadian complex, somewhere, of course, where they are now to be involved in, and of course with their work, you know. So always saluting, always meditating, and always, you know how my ASP brain works, always calculating kind of the cost of living vis-a-vis the cost of gas, because if you're not driving electric or hybrid, then you pay 75% more than in February 2020, early 2020, right? Even if it went down by a penny, it seems like only 1 penny went down. It's always up and down. Yes, it's always 153.9, 155.9, 163, 164, 166.9 nowadays, eh? It's always around that. I think September, the average price for last month was about 163, while the average price of gas for 2020 February was 93 cents. So that is approximately 75% more. So basically, all cars, if they're not electric. So if they're electric, it does imply I gotta give a shout out to Hydro-Quebec workers, you know, who build all the dams. That's why we got the electricity, which is clean, zero pollution, zero emission energy. We got about 63 dams, interestingly enough. So all this electricity which comes from Hydro-Quebec does not pollute, eh? It's from hydro water. So all this electricity, even my electricity, by which I'm doing, of course, this video here, is clean, zero pollution, zero energy emission. And of course, that is what it is. Just clean, energetically clean, and of course, it's ecological. And that's why we got a little bit of that respect, and got to build some more of those dams. So let's build the 4 on the Canadian-US border, the Imperial People's Coliseum, you know, where me and Donald Trump are gonna fight it. My way to fuse Canada best. And it's not 51st, it's gonna be 13, just like the 13 original, providentially. The 10 provinces and 3 territories of Canada, we're gonna merge the North Strong and Free. We're the land of the free and the home of the brave, but it's not enough. We gotta add some loving and justice and righteousness. We gotta add some loving, some justice, some righteousness. We gotta add some loving, some righteousness, some justice, eh? Somebody making love, I hope, today. Otherwise, what are we fighting for, you know? Wall Street got their skyscrapers, got their sats, got their billions and millions, you know? The majority of the population now are very stressed financially. Even me, financially stressed. But of course, me, as I do have Asperger's, being that I am on the autistic spectrum, it's more different for my financial economic stress, which is mainly due to having lost my jobs and employments due to being different, you know, because Asp is again my community, and I'm going to get into Asperger's a bit. Again, we have a very high unemployment rate. It's 80%, you know. So 80% unemployment is totally unacceptable. You realize, eh? You realize that that's 4 out of 5. So it's 11 times higher than for you, the neurotypicals, with which we have to build bridges. And those bridges, of course, where we build the bridges, whether we build small bridges, medium-sized bridges, large bridges, or extra large bridges. And of course, all those bridges which we build, so all those bridges which we have to build, they're about the 4 categories. So they're small, medium, large, or extra large. So within, of course, those categories, we're gonna have to build, of course, the bridges thereof, just like when you order a pizza. So you might order a small, medium, large, or of course, whatever the pizza what I have to order. Of course, that is, of course, the consequences where we have, of course, to be. So, of course, whether we build those bridges in those different sizes and dimensions, we have to build them on both sides. It is a mutually beneficial mutual relationships where we have, of course, to build those bridges in different ways. So they're small, medium, large, and extra large, of course. So being that they're small, medium, large, or extra large, those are the bridges which we have to be building continuously. So it's not something which is just from for us an aspect towards neurotypical, see you the 99%. It also requires mutual bridge building. So from our side to yours and from your side to us. Because myself, I don't have hostile, antagonistic, you know, hostilities. You know, I just live with this neurodivergence, and this neurodivergence, of course, makes me different. And this difference makes me, and many aspects, weird, strange, bizarre, awkward, and odd to many neurotypicals with which we have to build bridges. Of course, the workplace being that is mostly constructed, built, and made for neurotypicals, thus Aspies are overly disproportionately unemployed. And it's with Aspies you have to be sometimes more direct and straightforward, as we ourselves are sometimes more direct and straightforward, right? So we ourselves are more straightforward and direct. Here we got twins. No food waste. We got twins. I'm gonna retrieve these and eat them. They're kind of cold twins, but they're gonna get hot and cold and hot. See, you never know. Food security is important. So I retrieved them from they were gonna get crushed by the cars there in the corner. Because if the cars would have went on them, I guess, gonna smell them. Oh yeah, smell good. Smell good. Car would have passed, they would have crushed them right there. So they would have got the crushed on the car, would have crushed them. So that's why we have to be concomitant about that. So here we are in Westmount, one of the 3 peaks of the 3-peak mountain system known as Mount Royal. And I guess I'm gonna press the button. So we have to build bridges, whether we build small bridges, medium bridges, large bridges, extra large bridges, just like when you order a pizza, when you order fries, when you order coffee, of course, those bridges have to be built. So, of course, all those dimensions, of course, of building bridges, it is compensatory, of course, for the life-affirming matter where we have now to be in the domain where we are, of course, to be loving and to be, of course, of the same category of loving the dimensional representations of all the life-affirming matters where we exist in the correlative aspect of being neurodivergence. And of course, being neurodivergence is, of course, not an illness, and Asperger's is not a disease. That's where we have to draw the line, and it's not bad, evil, or negative, or demonic or satanic, right? It's not nothing to do with demonic and evil and bad or negative. It's just we can be very weird, very eccentric, very odd, very strange, very bizarre. But it's not demonic, it's not satanic. We're just different because our brains are different. So I'm going to take a few minutes on Asperger's and see, for example, you see the numbers there? They're flashing numbers, right? Those 4 cars that passed. See, there was 44, 48, 46, and 45, right? Those 4. Now there's different numbers. So that's the speed. And in my mind, what my mind was kind of automatically doing was calculating the average of those 4, right? So basically I was doing math in my head, and sometimes mathematics is constant involved whenever I'm marching and trying to calculate the products, the ratio, the percentages, and the cost of increase, such as, of course, the cost of gas and the cost per distance of the cars, and the average impact, financial, economic, in a mathematical way of the impact on the cost of living and the financial crisis that different individual citizens might face, because they still might have to travel the same distance with the cars to get to their jobs and to do their activities as they did in 2019, early 2020. And thus the fact that gas prices have increased by more than 75%, that means that they're spending 75% more for that same distance, basically to resume the financial mathematics without going into the constants and the variables. And of course the constant is the consumption of gas per same distance, right? It's always X amount of gas consumption per Y, per the distance, per the distance, of course. So that is just what it is with that on the appellative side, of course, of being translucent of all the concordates. And of course that is 75, of course, percent. So of course in the relationship of the X and Y, and the Y and the X, that is the other concomitant relationship thereof, where we have now to be in the domains that we have, that those 4 cars, which their speed was in the red, all of them, because that's what that is. And in my mind I was adding them up: 44 plus 48 plus 47 plus 49, and I was trying to do the average, right? So the average is about 46, right? Because if you take 44 plus 48, right, 44 plus 48, then you get 92, right? And you get 92, right? Actually, you get 92, right? 44 plus 48. Right, then you add 47, and then you add 46. So you do the average, mathematical. But sometimes it's just automatic in my brain. I don't need to do it too much when it comes to those numbers. All right, so those are just the numbers which you have. Or you can also take the lowest. There's another way to do it, but this is a more tricky one. So you could take the lowest. So the difference between the numbers also, you can go from what the numbers were, right? So for example, 44 to 48, that's 4. That's one difference. Then of course you have 4. Then you have from 44 to 46, right? That's 2. That's 6, right? And 6. And then you have 47. So that is, of course, 7, right? That's 47, that's 3. So you have 6, 9. So that 9 you divided by kind of like 4, and it's 2.5, right? So then you add it with the lowest. So that's why I said 46. It's 46.5 specifically, precisely. You're gonna be like, whoa, that's just math. It happens in my brain. I'm not super advanced, super scientist, super in math. It's just when it comes to ratios and averages and percentages, for some reason I'm I'm above average, and I like doing it. I do it constantly, actually. You know, like there's constantly the sort of in the background mathematical calculation of a speculative nature, but based on math, based on fundamental mathematics. For example, with the cars, right? I know that they might have to travel a certain distance, but knowing, I try to kind of calculate what is the impact of the cost on the wallet for them to have to pay 75% more than in 2019, early 2020, because that's what the average price has increased by. From an average in Montreal Island, and a Hawk Montreal here, Hawk N.A.C.W.P, that Hawk Island. So that's just what it is. Or for example, the prices, like yesterday I bought the wafers in my video. You can see my video from yesterday. I purchased those wafers at the store. Now they were initially $1, right? They were initially $1. So they went from $1 first. 3.5 years ago they were $1. Then they increased to $1.17. That was the first increase. That's 17%, right? 17%. From 117 they went to 139. About four months ago they were 139. Even 4 weeks ago they were 139. Now, yesterday they were 150. So the increase first increase was 17 cents, right? Then the second increase was 12 cents, because 39 minus 17, well, it's actually 22, right? 22. 39, because 39 minus 17 is 22. So the first increase was 17 cents, right? Then 22 cents from 117 to 139, that's 22 cents. And then from 139 to 150, that's 11 cents. So the total is an increase of 50 cents. Which is basically from $1 to $1.50, which is 50% more. But now if you think about it, did the workers get a 50% increase? And the answer is no, because the average salaries have increased by about 4.4% since February 2020. I kind of love how it is here with the white flowers and the green on both sides there. And the white and the red go well together on that side, perpendicular with some pink and rosé. Kind of a nice garden here as well. So the average price, so that's where the fundamental problems lie, which we're going to discuss a bit, but just going to, because I introduced it now. So the stagnation of the salaries is a big economic problem, right? Because the salaries have stagnated. That's the stagnation of the salaries is a big problem, very big problem, huge, right? Because the salaries have and are stagnating. The salaries are stagnating, right? The salaries are not going up. Most of the salaries. That's why we have more strikes. The majority of the salary, of course, are stagnating. So the stagnation of the salaries is very much a big problem, because the prices kept going up, eh? Even the wafers, and I love wafers, but I have to say that for the type of wafers, I still find that $1.50 is affordable, because they're 175 grams. But nonetheless, they increased by 50 cents, which is exactly 50%. Because from $1 to $1.50, although they did it 3 times, from $1 to $1.17. Just like with a chocolate bar, I used to buy the same chocolate bar for $1. It was $1, it was 99 cents. First it went to $1.17, then to $1.49, then to $1.79, and now to $2. So basically it doubled. But how many salaries have doubled? Beautiful yellows. So how many salaries have doubled? Not many. Not many. Not many. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Not many, eh? Not many. Not many salaries have doubled. So of course all the appellative, of course the fact that not many salaries have doubled. But these prices, not all prices have doubled, of course, but many prices have. Many prices have. So of course categorizing that reality, of course, of the stagnation of the salaries and the growing cost of living, of course, is the fact that is a big problem in relation to whatever the exactitude of the domain is. The domains here being the individual sovereign citizens, and the plural of the domains are, of course, the I'm not going to go into the deep mathematics here, but just so that I explain a bit of the variable is the price that changes, is the price of the good, right? The goods, such as chocolate, such as milk, such as whatever, like my wafers that increased that I bought yesterday. And the other variable is the salary. So if you take these two variables, you can see that the salary has only increased by an average of 4.4% in 5 years, average salaries, while these goods have increased by such a big percentage. So thus, if you take gas, price of gas, which is 75% more, and price of these wafers, you see how it affects the purchasing power of the majority of individuals. And for most part, it is the same, of course, in the 50 states. So it's, of course, where does the price increase? We have to, of course, discern because of international trade and globalization and the newly trade war. We have this new trade war, which is the reality. And of course, the fact of this new trade war is that it is affecting us in a manner in which it is pressing upon the purchasing power of the individual as well. And it could be that the prices are raised by the producer seller, because the wafers, if they're cocoa, or the ingredients also can go up in price at the farm level, right? Like cocoa, price of cocoa went up. The price of cocoa went up tremendously in the past 3.5 years if you look at the price of cocoa in US dollars, right? So we have several factors converging into a powerful economic storm, financial economic storm for the majority of the citizens, and the growing financial inequalities, right? So that is the problem. The stagnation of the salaries fundamentally have not kept up with inflation and stagflation even. I notice a lot of products used to be, for example, 125 grams, they reduced it to 105, or there used to be 150, it's 120. Used to be 650 is 625 for a coffee, a certain coffee, for example, right? So they reduced it from 675 grams. One of it I know from 675 to 625. So 675 minus 625, that's 50 grams. So they reduced about. So in percentage, it's about 8%, 7 point something, about 8%. You say, oh, it's not a lot. It's not a lot, but all items, really get it? Because times 10, that 50 grams is all more than a pound. So basically for every 10, due to shrinkflation, they're able to sell one more. So they reduce from 10, then they get an extra one. And even they increase the price. You get it? So those are the financial mathematical calculations, right? So those are the financial mathematical calculations, right? So this is the financial matter. So the increase thereof is, of course, in congruency to what I just said, right? So this is just the relationship of the fundamental economics, right? Of the fundamental economics. So basically, of course, the shrinkflation is reducing the package, right? But make a mathematical note. Say, 50 grams is not that much. However, they reduced it for all those items which used to be 675 grams. Let's say for all the North American or Canadian market, right? Or Canadian market, because here we're dominated by top 3. I even laugh, and sometimes people say to me, well, I don't go to shop at Super C. I only go to Metro, or vice versa. I only go to Metro and never go to Super C. But you do, because they're actually one and the same. It's just a change in name. Because Super C, a big supermarket chain, is of course a big supermarket chain, of course, what we have now. And of course a big supermarket chains are of course incrementally what we have, of course, now to be. All the dynamics what we have now are of course all the dynamics what we got to fundamentally appellate and of course integrate in the well-being. And of course all this wellness and all this of course generational of course awareness awareness is of course fundamentally that we have of course this concomitantly appellation that we have now to be of course on the left and on the right, and that's just what we have to be now, of course, to be in the left and of course in the middle, that we have to calculate of course this what we got now of course to be loving about, and that's what we have of course to preposition ourselves to these mathematical calculations, which fundamentally are also a necessity, a requirement if you think about it, right? Because that shrinkflation reducing of course 50 grams times 10, that is 500 of course times 10, and that means that they of course gonna get one more, but that is of course the most of the products they go for the corporations, you know, for the corporations. So that's why they got of course that XYZ for the corporations, you know, for the corporations, the majority, because the salaries have stagnated, and for the vast majority, right? So you understand the dynamics. So of course the salaries have stagnated, and of course all the salary stagnations is of course something which we have of course now to be, all the salaries which are now to be of course concomitantly. Now that is just the reality. That is the reality. So shrinkflation, inflation, prices increasing. So it is a very, very problematic for the vast majority of citizens. Very problematic. It's quite hardcore. So now I'm just gonna, as I discussed it a bit, to do further, of course, mental evaluations, I'm just gonna discuss, of course, Asperger's a bit, just to take a few minutes, because it's important, of course, to discuss the neurological mental divergent condition known as, of course, Asperger's. Aspiness, of course, which is part of my mental capabilities, of course, to be in this generation, of course, as a millennium, and of course millennial, and we got to work together with all intergenerationally, but it has been more openness, more even appreciation of people with Asperger's, with autism, HFA, high functioning autistics is one and the same. And of course I gotta give a shout out to my anonymous friend for the 2 books on autism, and one is of course Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome, and Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome is of course the correlative, of course, what we have to be doing now, of course, in all the concomitant relationships where we are now as we go on atop the mountain. Let's go. Oh, I got a little bit of cigarette smoke as we go atop the mountain and then come back, I guess. That is where we are now. So those are the dynamics where we are now, and gonna get it. I feel like going on from the other side, but now let's just go in. Let's just go in. Then I'll let my main out. Then my a bit and get into the fierceness of the mistress. Fierceness of the mistress, goddess in the lights. Mistress of the lights here, you know, they gotta get on that concomitant. And it's colder. I don't mind. I even have a video coming during storms, winter storms here, and you see that it's kind of only me. So hey, me and the flora and the fauna, and the colder it gets, the less and less people come, but I come all terrain winter storms, and when it's a winter storm, I have a video, I come and it's a winter storm and you see me coming here to the mountain and there's lots of snow everywhere, blowing snow, and I'm filming and I reach the top and I'm solo, and it's just white full of snow, winter snowstorm. So gonna take some minutes on Asperger's, but I love coming here. So being that I have this neurological mental divergent condition, you know, Asperger's, and discuss it a bit just because it's super important that I do, and it's important because people to understand, because I don't require lots of support, just more understanding. And like many aspies, you know, myself have suffered, struggled, suffered, and like many aspies, you know, have suffered and have struggled and have suffered and struggled, and here I am, you know, with lots of suffering and the struggling thereof, you know, to be here at the top of the mountain where we are now, conquer mentally, to have made it joyous and free, financially stressed. Very grateful. I got wafers at home. I got milk. I gotta be double grateful, you know. I got milk, so I gotta be grateful with that, and that's just something which I gotta be meditating upon to be now as I go to the top. And you're gonna see less and less, of course, as we go, less and less people where we have now to be in the dynamics. So of course, all this to say that the gratitude, which of course is expressive on a day-to-day basis, and the dynamics which we live with are of course correlative to this neurodivergence, of course. So this neurodivergence which we live with is of course this mind which is different, and of course this mind mentality which is different makes us of course integrally in the aspects where we are now to realize all the faculties where we are to be consumed and energetically vibrating on a level where our mental capacities are different and divergent, but where at the same time we lack, you know, certain correlations and certain aspects where we see now that it is the domains where we are now of course involved in the faculty, in the levels of course of discussing what Asperger's is and what Asperger's is not. So of course all those relational aspects where we have now is the dynamics where we got to be of course on the relationship of the building and constructing those bridges, right? Because fundamentally we have to build bridges, as I don't have antagonistic feelings, you know, towards the neurotypicals. And of course those neurotypicals are the vast majority of the population. So that is just something where you have to be doing about myself, you know. So this neurodivergence makes yours truly implementing the categorization, of course, of it being. So of course all that domain to say is that of course the life affirming manners what we have now is of course this divergence, this mental psychic condition makes us different, of course, right? So we see the world differently through a different lens. It's not negative, it's not bad, it's just different, you know. So of course all this difference is of course concomitant, where of course all our relationships are of course to be dynamics. So this dynamic relationship of which we are now involved with is of course something sent to be of course involved in all the faculties of being and thinking, that we process information differently from the majority of the population. And of course it's not in a negative, detrimental manner. It is of course difference, and of course this difference of course in concomitant aspect of where we have to evaluate all our psychic well-beings of course are for the domains where we build those bridges while remaining ourselves as aspies, as being different, free and in liberty and secure to be in expressing our aspiness as we can without harming others. Not, I mean, when we offend us, when we might say things, aspies we tend to have sometimes be direct and straightforward, you know, to be direct and straightforward. We don't mean to offend necessarily, but of course that's just how we are, you know. We don't mean to offend necessarily, just that our brains process a social information differently, and this is more difficult for us. So we might of course be straightforward and direct, and in all the appellatives, of course, minutiae of course the domains of work, domains of social interactions, domains of public spaces, domains of scholarly education, all the domains of civilization. And for nature, for that matter, now I'm in the midst of the mistress. Now I'm in the mistress's fiercest mistress's mist, and of course that is of course something which we have now to be relationships about, and all those domains where we got now to be involved are to build these bridges and concord with harmony with nature and civilization without spitting Latin terminologies, although Latin is of course the motto of both Montreal and Canada, and Mario Masca and Mario United States, and NATO animus inconsuelo liber. So this divergence makes us different from the way we perceive social information. We process social information differently, and of course again, it's not negative, it's not evil, it's not of course in any way, shape or form, whatever the case may be, of course, that we process information where we are now, the dynamical information and relationships where we have to be expressing this difference in a manner, of course, where we have to be now fully involved in all the manifestation, of course, of all domains where we got to be plural about, and of course to manifest without restriction, right? Without restriction. However, with consideration. So consider it. Just tell me, let me know if we're discussing or whatever, and I'll consider all my great effort. Because I made of course great effort, of course, in Continuum, especially my anonymous friend. Thank you for those 2 books on Asperger's. One book, well, they touch upon Asperger's, they're autism related, which Asperger's and autism have merged, but one book in particular, which was loaned 4 times, from the library, from the library, of course, 4 times. That was, of course, the concomitant, of course, relation which we have now to be in the preposition, of course, now, and of course that relationship is, of course, related to Asperger's, right? So Asperger's. Thank you, anonymous friend, for gifting me a book appreciating Asperger's syndrome. Appreciating Asperger's syndrome is of course a book which I recommend to all, so it's a book which I recommend to all. It's published before it has merged with HFA. It's called Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome. Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome is of course this book which has to be concomitant, of course, to be suffused with the knowledge and the information of our difference and our distinction, of course. Those are, of course, all the things which we have to be inside the matter where we go now to be in the domain name. Olé. 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 Yes. So here we are. In the dark we see better sometimes. In the dark sometimes we see better. Break some illusions, I guess. So 4 more minutes on Asperger's. We're different and we have to build bridges. The bridges which we have to build are of course different levels of bridges which we have to build. And those bridges have to come from both ways. We have 4 main problems, Aspies, which face us on a regular basis. And those 4 problems are the lack of friends. For me, solution is clear, straightforward. Friends with benefits only. Friends with benefits only. Don't waste my time, I won't waste yours. Or don't waste my time, I won't waste yours. Friends with benefits only. That's what we are. This is beautiful here. Look at that beautiful gardens. Beautiful gardens here. See, look at that. How beautiful. Here's, we got Gonna get there. So these that's the pyramid there. See, that's the pyramid city. So here's how kind of Montreal where you got. And that is something which we have now to be in the relationships of this Hakka of Montreal, and those are just, of course, something which we have now to be concomitantly and to be evaluated upon all these domains that we have now to be, and that's just something which we have, of course, to appellate, and of course, it is something which we have now. Here, we're gonna go see the city from the other side, of course. But these yellow here, I wanna see it. So much joy, so much joy here, There's so much joy, So 4 main problems, and I definitely suffered, struggle because of Asperger's, So that is what it is. Here we are, in the relationships between us, Aspies and you. We have to build bridges. So here's the top of the Belvedere, the headquarters of the dancing goddess of our coming of our empire, the 63, by the way. So we're going to finalize on Asperger's. Of course, we have 4 main problems which are affecting Aspies in the majority of the problems which we have. We lack friends. We have trouble making friends because we're different. So we have these special interests, routines, and odd character traits. Not bad, not evil, not negative, just strange. And myself, it's always, for years and years and years, fitness sports, geopolitics, fitness sports, rock and roll, and all those domains, of course, which we are now to be, of course, in the domain names where we are now concomitantly, of course, to be and to resolute ourselves and resolute, of course, for all domains now. But the lack of friends is a problem. Friends with benefits only from now on. That's why don't waste my time, I won't waste yours. Friends with benefits only from now on. Friends with benefits, of course, all that. Friends with benefits, of course, to say you gotta be 18 plus for that, And of course, we have a high depression and suicidal rate. I was depressed, suicidal myself for a few years. It's about end of 2014, about summer 2017, when I traversed Canada coast to coast, and that event changed my life. I established the strongest with the core of my fellow Canadians, and I got out of depression. And my brothers and sisters in the 50 states always pledge your legions to our family, and of course all the congregation where we have now to be, the relationships, of course, where we are to be concomitantly, of course, to do, and of course to be now appellative about is something which we have to get on the levels of the playing field. That, of course, is something where we have to get now the relationships now, and we have, of course, to get on that same level playing field, and of course we have to correlate, of course, that relationships where we are now, that we have, of course, the domains, and of course the full moon is still there, full for the last day, and of course the problem is the high depression and suicidal rate. The other problem is lack of employment. We tend to lose employment often. Myself, of course, had many jobs. HAD had many jobs. I just wasn't able to keep them long term, as the Aspies, my fellow Aspies and I, we have these difficulties in maintaining long-term employment. because we're different. We sometimes are very direct and straightforward, and sometimes people have to be straightforward and direct, of course, with us. And all that, of course, is to say in the concomitant appellations that we are different, right? So we're part of this tiny minority. So, of course, the lack of friends who benefits only from now on, or pledge your allegiance, and of course the other domain is, of course, now, of course, the lack of friends, and of course the lack of friends in the situational awareness, of course the lack of friends for the fact that it is of no time to be wasted. Friends with benefits only, consent, hygiene, and of course that's a problem for us, making long-term friends. Another problem is high depression and suicidal rates. Another problem is, of course, high dropout rates, and of course it is myself. I graduated high school, so having graduated high school, of course I dropped out of college. I graduated high school, and of course I did not pursue higher education, but I have a high school diploma. And of course those are the four problems: high dropout rates, high suicidal depression rates, high unemployment rates. 80% of unemployment is very high, and of course lack of friends. I graduated high school, I'm okay with that. All the work that I did, I'm okay with that. I'm the people's doctor, and friends with benefits only, pledge your allegiance, support the dream. And that is, of course, the dream that we have to see for ourselves in all the domains where we are now, of course, that see, that's the moon there. That's the moon there. So of course that is, of course, to say now that we have now concomitantly, of course, involved ourselves to be, and of course to be now changing topics from the four main problems of aspects that we face to, of course, go, of course, where we have now for the left and for the right, and in the middle straight into geopolitics. Geopolitics, and that's what it is with that, and that's what we gotta get doing on that. Geopolitics, that is have to be done. Of course, that is something which we gotta get doing on that drill. So of course it's something which we have to constitute, of course, in the simulacrum, and in, of course, all the relationships what we have now, to be prudent about, and of course to be open about the discussion which we're gonna have to have now, because now we're entering my domain, my realm, my kingdom. But we're gonna take about some seconds there to, of course, stretch here and gaze, of course, upon the moon. Beautiful event, grateful for today. Grateful for today, that's what it is now, and that's why we gotta get it on the go, So here it is, of course, the skyscrapers, butchers, bakers, nurses, doctors, firefighters, doctors, electricians, and all those information, all those butchers, the bakers, the nurses, and all those doctors, firefighters, of course, all those involved in the production, distribution of food, dairy, and all across the 50 states, firefighters, butchers, plumbers, electricians, the welders, and that is something which we have, of course, to have, of course, in the informational awareness of the truckers, the firefighters, the plumbers, the electricians, the nurses, and all those doctors, all those firefighters, of course, all those involved in the production, distribution of food, and all those, of course, who are now involved in the firefighting and the ambulance drivers, security forces across the 63 pledge allegiance leaders. That's what we gotta get doing with that, and that's why we gotta get on that drill now to be incur, of course, for the propositions, of course, of where we are now, to get it left, right, and right and left, and of course to circumspect, of course, all the domain for the firefighters and the farmers and the production of food. All those now, of course, flipping some burgers, cheeseburgers now across the North American Collectif. And see, that's the moon there. The moon full is getting full, and here's Hawk Island, Montreal, the island of the Hawk, my home in this life and in another life, and in all, of course, those civilizational complexes where we are now, of course, to salute 50 states. We gotta get rid of the border as soon as possible, and calling, of course, for the mountain on the mountain for the 24th of December 24th, 25th. Here, we're gonna have the summit banquet of course, here as we're gonna have that relationship, of course, in concomitant, of course, to be established thereof, and of course to get it on those drills now, and to get, of course, all those to be level playing field for us to have this reset and implement my DRT theory, and of course the protocols which we're gonna have to establish in concomitant, of course, where we are to be now, of course, and to be saluting all the public workers, also pick up the garbage, the recycling, please, NFL, NHL, MLB, give them a little bit of that good loving tickets for them distribute. And of course it is time for the DRT, it is time for geopolitics. I'm gonna say my gratitude. Here is this beautiful city, beautiful moon. So there, here we are, financially stressed, but I guess I'm free. My rent's paid, electricity bill's paid, and you know, that's what it is with that, and that's what we gotta get drilling, man, and get into the geopolitics now. So geopolitics, back into the mistress, the forest here atop the mountain, Mount Royal, the headquarters, of course, of the dancing goddess and the dragon kingdom. That is what it is now, of course, to be in the concomitant appellation, of course, and all that to say, of course, now that we have the domain to be related about. I urge again all to leave the baggage at the door. We're entering my domain, geopolitics. So I predicted what's happening now back in 2019. In 2019, I predicted what's happening now back in 2019. I predicted now what's happening now back in 2019. In October 17th, to be specific, in 8 days, it's gonna be exactly 6 years. So I predicted that there will be an international conflagration. You heard that correct. So I predicted that it's gonna be a World War III, basically. October 17, 2019, I have proof because I have the videos, and I even have, of course, the videos where I discuss this reality. So that I discuss this reality is, of course, something which we have, of course, to be in the situational awareness where we are now. So, of course, all the domain where we are now is that I have predicted what's happening now, of course, what's happening now to be on the side, of course, of the relation where we are now. So, you know, so of course, having that I predicted this situation is, of course, related to what's happening now, you know. So basically, of course, the relationship is, of course, what we have now is, of course, that I did not predict that there's going to be a deterioration of relations with the United States. So that I did not predict. The deterioration of relations with the United States, I did not predict. I predicted an international conflagration, but I did not predict that we're going to reach such a low point in the relation with the United States. That we're going to reach such a low point. That I did not predict. So I predicted, of course, that international conflagration, but this is new. The re-election of Donald Trump is new for me to take into consideration as an independent geopolitical theoretical analyst, theorist, philosopher, and strategist, of course. So being, of course, that we have now the domain and, of course, the relationship thereof of these domains, that I did not predict his re-election. And furthermore, the fact that since August 1st, I know when Connie went yesterday and they addressed that situation, and of course the fact that we're designated as an unusual and extraordinary threat to the American people from Canada because of the reasons, of course, given there is, of course, the fentanyl crisis, of course, the fact that fentanyl has crossed more than before, of course, the fentanyl having crossed, of course, there, of course, in the layers. Of course, the other motive given is that we lacked, of course, coordination. Coordination implies action. When you cooperate, you don't necessarily coordinate, but when you coordinate, you don't necessarily cooperate, right? Cooperation implies action. And the fact that it's mentioned in black and white by the dictum and signed by President Trump of one of the other motives by which is we are deemed an extraordinary and unusual threat is the fact that, of course, tariffs have been increased as well, right? The tariffs, the motive for the tariffs being increased, and the fact that we're designated as unusual and extraordinary threat to the American people is the fact that so much fentanyl has crossed that it could have killed potentially 16 million Americans. And of course, all that to say is, of course, that there has been the situational awareness of now to be us, and of course, all that domain, and of course, all that relationship is, of course, the situation where we have now to be on the situational awareness of the plateau, to be appellative and of course industrious about, and to reach a solution and to finalize and reach a solution which is going to bring us a solution with the relationships of which we have to establish mutually beneficial relationships thereof. So that is, of course, just where we have to drill it from now on. And this, of course, that's it is to say. So that is to say that is just to say now that the relations that are to be that to interpose a specific, of course, reality of where we are now and where we have to move forwards is because us as Canadians and my brothers and sisters in the USA vis-a-vis Canada is the same principle. Us, we got to work to have with each other the best, to establish the best cordial economic, social, military relations because of our geographical reality and the fact for us Canadians that the British Empire has dissolved, and the fact that the king is absent. And of course, the fact that the king is absent is, of course, that it's time for the republic, and we should have been a republic on the 1st of January, of course, 2000, the year 2000, and of course, at the end of the century, of the turn of the millennium, we should have been, of course, a republic. We should have been a republic, and of course, all that relationship to say, of course, thereof, that we have these concomitant relationships and appellations where we have, of course, to be on this domain name, of course, to, of course, congregate ourselves into this understanding that for us, because of the relationship of coast to coast, ocean to ocean, the geographical reality that we face is that we have two oceans, coast to coast. We have two oceans, right? So that is just the fact in point. That is just the fact in point where we have now to establish all that mark so that we move forward in this understanding that just like the pie symbol, the pie has two heads, that it's not a pie like an edible pie, that's an apple pie, cheese, burger pie, blackberry pie, and of course edible pie, and of course any other pie that it has to be, of course, such that you can eat, such as strudel pie, blueberry pie, and of course all those domains where of course you gotta eat, but it's not, of course, in such a manner of course you have that pie, but of course it is the pie where you, of course, have to establish that it is the established constant, mathematical constant, which is always the relationship between, of course, the relationship between the pi symbol, which is a numerical value. It is a constant. It is 3.1516, and it is always thus. So it has like two heads, right? The N. It's like an N with two heads. That's why coming of our empire will be two-headed, two-faced. One for goodness and kindness, benevolency, mercy. The other one for justice and strength. Right, so it's an N, the letter for Normandy, natural, neurodivergent, natural, neutral, neurotypical, right? That is the numerical value of the pi symbol. It's a symbol. It's like the two-headed, two-faced N, the letter N. It's always 3.1415, and it represents the value, of course, between the diameter and the circle. The diameter and the circle. It's always 3.1415. So that fact that we must do work and establish for us the constant, just like that pi symbol is, that we must work to establish the best economic, social, military, security relations with the United States, and the United States to work to establish the best economic, social relations with us, vis-a-vis us. So it's a reciprocal affair. It's a reciprocal affair, right? It goes both ways, you know. It goes both ways, you know. So it's vice versa, right? It doesn't change. It hasn't changed in decades. That is so today. So thus, that statement, and this applies for my brothers and sisters in the United States vis-a-vis Canada, and it applies for Canada vis-a-vis the United States, that we must work jointly to establish the best economic, social, political, defense, security relations with each other, mutually beneficial. So that is just what we have to work to establish. When it comes as a priority, as a number one priority in foreign affairs, not domestic internal affairs, with whom we must work to establish the best cordial relations with, that is just a motive, of course, to establish the best cordial relations with, of course, each other. And that is just what we have to do to establish, to work thereof. So the fact that we're designated as an extraordinary and unusual threat, that is, of course, consequentially where we have now to work to repair this and to even strengthen it by my theories, because that is just the way it is for us. There's no way around that. So we must establish, of course, to work that. Of course, now we're going to establish that. And when I pass here, I always click with my parallel life. I always click with my parallel life, where I design, build supercomputers, microchips, rockets, telecommunications antennas such as this one. And in that parallel life, I know everything there is to know about this antenna. I love that red and white with that 4 little places there, 1, 2, 3, 4, and to the 3G, because in the parallel life I'm a super ASPI scientist. I design, build supercomputers, satellites, microchips, and it is the year of darkness, 2029. In that parallel life is the year of darkness. It is December 8th, 2029, and that's how I rock and roll there. So now that we have that established, I want to discuss, of course, the fact that I predicted what's happening now. I have the proof, and I also created a workout training program system to go hand in hand with it. The General War Integrated Total Body Training System is a workout training program which I've created back in 2019, and I performed more than 372 sessions. And see that red RED light? See yesterday, in the video from yesterday? That is the light which I pointed from kilometers and miles away, because sometimes we go by the river there when we went shopping, and then we pointed the camera here. So basically the mountain can be seen afar off. The mountain can be seen way from afar, from a very, very, very big distance. So of course that is where we have, of course, to be now, consequently, and involved ourselves to reestablish these relationships. And of course the fact that we have this deterioration of relations with the United States is not a good idea for us, because 75% of our goods go to the United States. And again, the reality is that both Canada and the United States vis-a-vis each other as a primary number one hierarchical, if we are, of course, to establish a hierarchical position of establishing with whom do we have to establish the best economic, social, financial, military relations with, it is with the United States. There's just no way around that, of course, where we have now to be involved with, of course, to get a little bit of that rock and roll with with that. So all of that is to say now where we have now to be in the relationship of where we live now, that we have to establish to work the best cordial economic, social, financial relations with each other in that concomitant relationship thereof where we have now. So now we're gonna jump back in time again to 2019. So my prediction parallels what's happening now, but my prediction was based on one of the main important points was, of course, that I predicted and that I concluded that humanity were again set towards an international conflagration was, of course, due to the fact that many nation-state civilizations did not fully resolve their conflicts from the 20th century, namely the Second World War. The Second World War. Namely from the Second World War. Namely from the Second World War, and especially from the Cold War period. Especially from the Cold War period. From the Cold War period. Especially from the Cold War period, right? Especially from the Cold War period. So that Cold War period lasted about 45 years, almost 45 years. Some people say 46. I don't mind, as long as you don't place it less than 45. I say about almost 45. I place the Cold War from March 1947 till end of December 1991. So of course that is up to somebody's own proclivities, I guess, but it's not really a proclivity in that sense, but nonetheless it's a philosophical geopolitical discussion, as some extend the Cold War to longer than 45 years, even more than 46. I don't mind putting it longer. I do object to lowering it. So I say 44 years and 9 months, thus almost 45 years. So if you try to go lower, I will object. But if you try to go higher, unless you go higher than 50 years, then no, because the Cold War, I can go as far as began when the Second World War ended and the partition basically of Berlin in the east and the west, you know, by the Soviets. Basically, I can go to the Treaty of Malta if you want. 1945, I can go, you know, to the Treaty of Malta and the end of the Second World War, 1945. That's the beginning of the Cold War. But I generally place the Cold War from 1947, March 1947 till end of December 1991. So if you look at the world, conflicts, Israel, Hamas, are conflicts from the 20th century, right? They're conflicts from the 20th century. Hamas was established in 1987. Only 20 years later did they take power, you know. Only 20 years later did they take power, right? 1947. Correction, 1987 Hamas was established and they took power during the civil war of Gaza in 2007. 2007, you know. In 2007. June, July, right? In 2007. 2007. In 2007, June, July. June, July 2007. In 2007, June, July 2007. June, July 2007. So of course that is the reality where we have now to be involved in all the relationships where we are now in the domain. And of course all the life affirming matters is of course that we have this situation where we are now transponent to be, and of course where we are congregated as North Americans, and where we have vulnerabilities. We're vulnerable not because of the economic, financial, social sphere, but of course because of the relationships where we are now involved in all the crises, the crisis of the cost of living, and of course the World War III knocking on the door now. Hamas was founded in the 80s, of course, and that is just, of course, where Hamas was founded, and that foundational, of course, the area, of course, of Hamas, where we have now to be integrated, of course, and appellated with, is, of course, all that domain where we have now the relationship, of course, to be related about in all the domains, so that is just something where we have as a relationship as a faculty. Here, turn your head left and right. When you cross the streets, there's always something which gonna go check if they have a little bit of that hydration there, so if it's still, of course, going, I'm gonna take a minute properly and then discuss. Oh yeah, it's not closed yet. Usually in October it's closed, but it's gonna work a little bit. I wonder how it was built. All this privilege of civilizational privilege right here to drink the water. Otherwise we'll be drinking from the river, We'll be drinking from the river if you wouldn't have this electricity. So it's all, of course, all the domain where we have now intermittently, where we are, the civilizational aspects. So what we got now? So now we're gonna get back to the geopolitical, of course, relationship where we are now, of course, to be into matters, of course, of being geopolitically involved now, to be on the life affirming matters where we are now, of course, in concomitantly relationship of the realities, of course, where we are now. Start for now. I understand. Now it's okay. So now, of course, that we have the discussion, of course, of the geopolitics, of course, we have a little bit of that domain now to be concomitantly about in all the relationships where we have now. That's just the geopolitical reality for us Canadians and my brothers and sisters in the United States. We have much to work to establish the best relations with each other. There's no way around that. You cannot navigate that. You cannot escape that reality. That's just the way the reality of our geopolitics and because of our geography, geopolitics and common historical relationship is, of course, on the domain. Historical relationship is, of course, on the domain. So, of course, all that situational awareness, what we have now, all the life affirming matters where we got, of course, to decide our future is, of course, by integration and fusion, even by fusion. My way, of course, to fuse Canada, United States best. So, of course, all that domain is something what we have now to be on the side, of course, of the life affirming matters where we are now. So, of course, that is to say that we have the relationships where we are now to be mindful about is this coming DMA theory, which I'm going to discuss now. So the DMA theory, the direct military assistance and action theory, I'm going to discuss it now. So what is the DMA? The direct military assistance and action is, of course, something which we have to, of course, discuss. So it's not just a discussion, it's not just a theory, it's a protocol, a framework of reference, and a protocol of referential protocol, a working tool, of course, which has to be adopted and integrated for us in continuum from now until the future is made for NATO leaders and NATO member generals and leaders of NATO member countries. So it's NATO specific, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization member country, of which we are part of, and which Article 5 was only invoked once, of course. 9/11 was the only one time where Article 5 was only invoked. One time. Article 5 post 9/11. So post 9/11, the Article 5 was only invoked once, which was on 9/11, right? There was no other time in the history of NATO's foundation, that Article 5 was invoked. So of course, all that to say now is, of course, that before October 7, 2023, I was advocating for both Israel and Mexico to join NATO, which now has 32 member countries, of which Sweden is the last one to have had to join. So Sweden, of course, joined in the past, and of course that is, of course, just the realities of today. NATO comprising 32 member nation states. So before October 7, because technically in a state of war, a country cannot join, right? Well, before October 7, I had ongoing like a 4-part lecture going upon Genesis. It was called Genesis chapter, Genesis 33, NATO protocol or protocol initiative, Genesis 33, which is a reference to the biblical reference of the twins, Jacob and Esau. Jacob and Esau, Esau and Jacob, the twins, which were, of course, the twins in the Bible, right? Jacob, who became Israel, the father of the 12 tribes and all that in the Bible. And Genesis 33 is the story of them making an alliance, a pact, a reconciliation, and kissing there. So that is, of course, to say that was the name of the initiative, the protocol, semi-mystical but mostly political in nature, where I was discussing the fact and the call for NATO to include Israel and Mexico simultaneously at the same time, respectively, as the 32nd and 33rd. That's why it was called Genesis 30, NATO Genesis 33 protocol, initiative protocol, if you will. All right. So that was before October 7th, which is Israel's 9/11. But Israel and Ukraine was not part of NATO, right? Because the NATO Article 5, which is NATO is a collective security alliance. I'm not going to discuss the expansion of NATO, but however, it is important that, of course, NATO's expansion is taken into consideration. At that time, NATO's expansion is taken into consideration to the fact, of course, that the Warsaw Pact was, of course, part of the Soviet Union and the other socialist communist states, whereas some of them, such as Poland, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, at least these 4, were part of a common defense security protocol which paralleled NATO. NATO was founded in 1949. Last year celebrated 75 years. And Warsaw Pact lasted for a few decades as well. It was the co-equivalent of NATO was the Warsaw Pact. But of course, several countries which were part of Warsaw Pact, such as Bulgaria, Hungary, Romania, and Poland, right? Poland, Romania, Hungary, Bulgaria. These 4 are part of NATO now, paradoxically, in many ways. And of course, one of the reasons of Putin invading Ukraine was NATO's expansion, was a problem, was something which Putin objected to fiercely and was warning against, right? So this is part played in now to the DMAA, the direct military assistance, just like the motto of NATO stands for animus in consuelo liber, which is a mind unfettered in deliberation. So animus in consuelo liber stands for a mind unfettered in deliberation. Animus in consuelo liber stands for a mind unfettered in deliberation. Thus, my protocols initiatives, the DMA theory, which is a working tool, a protocol, work protocol, and not just a theory. It has to be consulted and made. It's a decision making tool. It's a decision making tool as well. Protocol philosophy, a decision making tool. So that is what it is. The DMAA, direct military assistance and action. The direct military assistance and action. So that is the DMAA, direct military assistance and action, as it is, of course, concomitant to all the relationships where we are now, of course, in concomitant, where we are, of course, involved now. So the DMAA, direct military assistance and action, that is the DMAA. Explain now. It stands for direct military assistance and action, or action or assistance reciprocally. So now that we have attained this, we have to discuss it. So it's, if NATO member countries decide to take action or assistance military, and has nothing to do with humanitarian matters, there's in the parenthesis a C, and that C can be that for example, nation states solidified their military alliance, such as Russia and China did. If you look at Russia and China, they solidified their military alliance. Another consequence was transnational criminal syndicate organized groups can be supported by adversarial member nation countries, because countries, of course, Canada, we assisted Ukraine by providing helmets, munitions, other tools, other war tools, such as, of course, tanks, not tanks necessarily, but armored vehicles, and munitions and artillery and drones and all sorts of weaponry, right? And other member nation countries. And by covert operations and other means, those adversarial positions, because so it has to do when we're involved by assisting or action non-NATO member countries who are in conflict. So when non-NATO member countries are involved, such as Ukraine is not part of NATO, so we assisted them, we're assisting them. So that creates the adversarial counterposition, where transnational criminal syndicate organized groups can be financed covertly by powers, by foreign powers such as Russia or China or other powers, right? Because last year what happened, the RCMP, the 25th of October, dismantled the biggest ever super lab in Canadian history. What if there were 5? That means there's 4 to go, right? So of course we were warned by the RCMP since 2015 and even since 2021 of a growing transnational criminal syndicate organized groups establishing themselves in Canada. So that might have to do with the consequence of the MAA, direct military assistance and action. Now I'm not saying whether to do it or not do it, XYZ, but we have to deliberate considering whether we're doing or not. So there has to be a deliberation, a deliberate consideration whether we decide to take action or assistance, because it has consequences. And last year the RCMP dismantled the biggest ever super lab, and the mention by Donald Trump of why Canada is designated as an unusual and extraordinary threat, one of the reasons is the super labs being present in Canada. So meditate on the DMA. I have past videos on it if you want to know more in depth. Commission, blah blah blah, commissions, finance, and we're going to do full hours of discussing the DMA with its ramifications and more complexities in depth, because that is a general introduction. So now to the DRT, the debt refusion theory. Because of 4 main problems in both Canada and United States which we face, we have to implement the debt refusion theory, which includes monetary integration in it. So I'm going to explain it. And of course, monetary integration theory is the financial theory which was implemented in the European Union. So the DRT, debt refusion theory, debt refusion theory, because we have 4 main problems in both Canada and United States, and that is the growing cost of living, growing cost of rents. My rent went up between $6 and $10 also. I'm not going to complain because I think it's fair for me, but I'm not going to give a precise number, between 6 and 10 for me. The stagnation of the salaries and the growing credit card debt. So those 4 problems economically affect the majority of citizens in both Canada and United States. Thus my DRT is the solution. So the DRT now explained, we're going to take all the public and the private debt, my $10,000 to the Bank of Canada. I don't have credit cards, I have a credit line. I have $10,000 in debt, Canadian dollars. We're going to take all the public private debt of Canada, coast to coast, ocean to ocean. We're going to add it. So we're going to add it all together. We're going to convert it into US dollars, and we're going to add it with the United States dollars. All the public-private debt of the United States together with Canadian public-private debt in US dollars. We're going to create a new central bank, because that's why when I said at the beginning, my DRT theory includes monetary integration theory, which is the financial theory which was implemented in the European Union by the Europeans, of course, having created and creating their own their own currency and their own multinational central bank. We're going to create the Imperial Central Republican Bank. We're going to create the UE, a value, UE, U dot universal, E dot exchange, U dot UE, the UE, U dot universal, E dot exchange, U dot UE, the UE, or the imperial dollar is going to be the value, is going to have the value of the US dollar. We're going to create this new currency, this new central bank, the Imperial Central Bank. We're going to get rid of the border. We're going to fuse the RCMP and the FBI. We're going to mass finance food security, mass finance healthcare. We're going to mass finance the complementary covenant and cooperative institutions of the Dragon Army, the Dancing Goddess Army and the Dragon Army. Both together. We're going to create them all together. How we're going to create it? And that's what we're going to do. We're going to create it together. All of them together, the public-private partnership. And of course, we're going to create fundamentally the hosts, and we're going to get rid of the border. We're going to make a census, do a census, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, Canada, United States. We're going to novus civis of the Imperial Republic. We're going to have a new constitution. We're going to build 44 tunnels, mass construct 44 tunnels in the case of a thermonuclear war. And of course, those 44 tunnels is going to be built on the ground and in the correlation aspect where we're going to have to be building them. So we're going to, of course, mass finance fitness, mass finance citizens to work out, train, exercise, mass finance fitness, mass finance citizens training, exercising, mass finance the Imperial tourist protocols. We're going to mass finance for rejuvenation, reclamation and rejuvenation every 4 seasons, spring, winter, summer, autumn. When a citizen of this new empire, we're going to fuse the 10, the 50 and the 63 in the new Imperial Democratic Republic every 4 seasons. Is going to be according 4 days. Once you're 16 and over, regardless anything else considering aside, once a citizen is 16 and over, is going to be accorded 4 days, 4 times a year, where food, lodging, and transport is going to be supported, so they can travel anywhere across the 63. You can take your 4 days 4 times, or you can accumulate, take 8 days twice a year, or 16 days once a year. You got to use them or lose them. Once you reach 44, is use them or lose them. This is going to create a great rejuvenation. We're going to rebuild the infrastructure, the bridges. We're going to create the Imperial SSD Legion, the Dragon Army, aka Imperial Integrated SSD Legion, and the Imperial Security Service Police. Why, by the fusing of the FBI and the RCMP, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, we're going to create this new currency only for SSD, Security Service and Defense. We're going to rebuild the ghettos. We're going to rebuild the Imperial People's Coliseum, the 4 buildings we're going to build. We're going to create the 44 tunnels, underground city tunnels in case of a thermonuclear war. Pledge you the DRT, the UE, U dot universal, E dot exchange, U dot unit, or the Imperial dollar. Was going to require my citizen brother Bill Gates of all public BlackRock and Blackstone, of all public-private institutions and organizations, of course. Mass RBC, my Royal Bank of Canada, is going to be required, and pledge your allegiance, the DRT and the Imperial Tourism Protocol. We're going to create 4 main ministries integrated with all existing organizations in a mass public-private partnership for our empire. Let it rise and let it be. I love thee, pledge your allegiance, our family always for the 63. That's part of the vision, the general manner, the DRT.